All right, well, thank you and welcome to my millet stuffed sweet potato cooking class. Thank you, Royal Oak Library, for having me come again to teach another delicious, healthy dish. So today's recipe is going to feature the whole grain millet. And this was actually requested by somebody who was a student in a previous class that I taught through the library. During the class, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to ask them. You can either put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and you can ask me the question. So during the class, if the people who are participating, if you want to just hit the mute button, there won't be any background noise going on while I teach. I am Chef Val. I have been teaching healthy whole foods cooking classes for 26 years. My business name is Macro Val, and my website is macroval.com. I am the author of 6 cookbooks. I teach cooking classes on a regular basis. Let's see, I have a YouTube channel. I have a private Patreon subscription cooking channel. I just joined Instagram. Hey, everybody, if you're on Instagram, it's chefval_macroval. That's kind of a new account for me. And so today I'm going to teach you how to make this delicious dish that's a Valentine's Day dish. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. This recipe is actually out of my year-round healthy holiday dishes cookbook, and it's in the Valentine's Day section because all the ingredients in it, well, I think all the ingredients in it are pretty much heart healthy. So Valentine's Day, good for your heart. So it's also a very pretty and colorful dish. And sweet potatoes are kind of orangish, reddish color. So I always think Valentine's Day when I think of it, right? So let's get started cooking the millet first and foremost. I'm going to move the camera over to the stove because that's where we're going to do the millet. All right, you can just put in the chat, yes or no. Have you ever had the whole grain millet? Anybody?
I'm not sure.
Okay. This is what the whole grain millet looks like before you cook it. So it's little yellow round balls, and this is the grain. Most people have seen millet in bird seed, which is interesting because we humans have been eating it for hundreds of thousands of years. And in modern day time, we put it in bird feed, but trust me, we should be eating it. So here's how you cook it. You take, for this recipe, a half a cup of millet, and you double the amount of water. So I've got 1 cup of water, half a cup of millet, put it in the pot like so. I don't rinse my millet. You don't have to rinse millet. It's not like rice. Some people rinse it, but I find that millet you buy from a health food store and it comes in a bag. It's usually very clean. There's no reason to rinse the millet. And you don't need to soak the millet because millet is a small whole grain and it cooks up in 20 minutes. So it cooks up relatively quick. You don't need to soak it. So the first thing you do when you're going to cook the millet or any whole grain for that matter, is you want to bring the water and the whole grain to a boil. So I have this on high right now. And then once the water starts boiling, it starts opening up the kernel of the whole grain and makes the whole grain more digestible just by boiling it for like 30 seconds. You don't need to boil it for any amount of time, just a minute is good. Then once it's boiled for a minute, you want to put it on the lowest possible temperature on your stove. Okay, everybody's stove is different, so you just have to kind of work with it until you figure it out. Now, this is a cooking tool. It's called a flame tamer or a flame diffuser. This is metal, this is wood. So you can pick these up like at a health or a kitchen supply store or on the internet. Now I use this all the time because I cook whole grains all the time. You put this on the burner and the heat is underneath it. And then I'm going to put the pot on top of it after it comes to a boil. it evenly disperses the heat underneath the pot so that the whole grain cooks evenly. So you don't accidentally scorch the whole grain. I use this flame tamer all the time when I cook brown rice, millet, quinoa, any whole grain. I even use the flame tamer on an electric stove. Yes. All right, so this is boiling now.
Right.
Boiling. All right, so let's put it back here. Lowest possible temperature. You put a lid on it. And now we need to set the timer for 20 minutes. That's how long it's going to take to cook. All right, I'm setting the timer. Get my timer here. All right, so yeah, millet cooks much quicker than like the whole grain brown rice, which takes an hour. Millet only takes 20 minutes. All right, let me tell you about the health benefits of millet. So millet is in the category of whole grains, complex carbohydrates. It's in the same category as brown rice, quinoa, oats, rye, things like that. It's a whole grain. Whole grains are the seed of the plant. They are nutrient dense. They're really high in fiber. High fiber food is good for your heart, good for your digestion, flushes out all the toxins out of your system. Whole grains give your body energy, long, sustainable energy to last throughout the day. When you digest whole grains, glucose gets released very slowly in your system. That's what gives you long, sustainable energy throughout the day because it's a complex carbohydrate. Now, a simple carbohydrate, which would be like white sugar, white flour, white rice, that is going to release glucose very quickly in your system. And you're going to get like a burst, and then you're going to come down and you're going to crash and you're going to die. So your glucose goes up and down when you eat simple carbohydrates, as opposed to complex carbohydrates, which stabilizes your energy and it releases the glucose very slowly into your system. Now, your brain loves glucose. Your brain like feeds on glucose. It's got to have glucose. So when you give your body whole grains, such as millet, on a regular basis, your brain is happy. You get fed this beautiful supply of food to your brain, and it's a calm, steady supply to your brain. So your brain is calm and steady, and your energy is calm and steady, and you can handle stress because we all have stress every day, like hitting us, right? And if your brain is not happy, if it's overwhelmed, if it's over like stimulated from highly refined, processed, simple carbohydrate food, it would be overstimulated, and it would be like your brain would be like this. But when you eat whole grains, your brain is like this, like happy. That's what whole grains do for not only your body, but also for your brain. Now, millet in particular is exceptionally high in iron and high in calcium. It is 100% gluten-free, and it is the easiest whole grain to digest. So if I do a consultation with someone and they have severe digestive problems, millet is probably going to be the first whole grain that I tell them to eat because it's the easiest one to digest. Millet feeds and nurtures your spleen, pancreas, and stomach. These are your middle organs right here in the middle of your body. These organs help you deal with stress because when you get stressed out, the middle of your body goes like this and tightens up and you don't feel good, right? So when you eat millet on a regular basis, it feeds and nurtures the spleen, pancreas, and stomach. So when stress comes to you, you can handle it. So I like calling millet my anti-stress grain. Millet, once it cooks up, is creamy, and it also is slightly sweet. So if you're going to create a stuffing, which we're going to stuff sweet potatoes, millet is an excellent choice because of its creamy nature. And it also has the tendency to hold together. If you're familiar with the whole grain quinoa, once you cook up quinoa, quinoa kind of falls apart. So it has a different texture. Millet kind of holds together. So it's creamier and it makes a really good stuffing, as I mentioned. Okay, so that's the whole grain millet. Any questions about millet so far? We're going to work on the sweet potatoes next. There's no questions about millet. Oh, actually, you know what? I think let's chop some vegetables before we work on the sweet potatoes. So the vegetables can be sauteing while I work on the sweet potatoes. That's probably a better idea. All right, let's set the sweet potatoes aside for now and work on vegetables. So who here likes chopping vegetables? Me, I like chopping vegetables. Put in the chat, yes, no, what do you think? You like chopping vegetables? Nobody said whether or not they like to chop vegetables. I'm going to take that as you love to chop vegetables then. All right, so we're going to chop vegetables and I always put water on my cutting board. So Susan says, yes, she loves to chop vegetables. Awesome. People always ask me, why am I putting water on my cutting board? And I teach this in all my cooking classes. When you put water on the board, it fills in the pores of the wood, and the wood doesn't absorb the color and the odor of the vegetable you're chopping. So my cutting board never smells like onions. It never smells like garlic. It never turns orange from sweet potatoes or anything like that because I have a wet cutting surface. Now I have one onion that I'm going to dice, and I soaked it in cold water. And I did that so that when I cut it, my eyes won't water or tear. Also, when you soak the onion in cold water, it makes it really easy for the skin to come off. I don't know about you, but getting that skin off of an onion is hard. So Mary says sometimes it's calming to chop vegetables. Yes, sometimes it is. All right, so let's just take that off there like so. I usually start just about every recipe I have with onions because I just love them so much. I love the flavor. So the onion, when it's raw, is pungent, but once it's cooked, it's sweet. And who doesn't love that sweet flavor? So now we're going to dice the onion. So we have the onion cut in half. So now we have a flat surface. You always want to cut with a flat surface. I'm going to go straight up and down with the lines, like so. And then I'm going to turn the onion like so, and I'm going to cut straight up and down, and I'm going to get diced onions. Like so. At the end, I kind of maneuver it, but I get all my diced onions like that. Let's get a bowl. And we'll put the onions in there. Now, onions have anti-inflammatory properties, antiviral properties, antibacterial properties. They're a little powerhouse right there, the onion. They also are 90% water, which means they're diuretic in nature, and they will help cleanse toxins out of your system. They will also help to hydrate your body because they're 90% water. I'm going to cut it. Now, I just got done teaching last Saturday, the first class in my Healing with Foods 3-week series that I'm teaching on Saturday. And it's compresses, poultices, teas, and more. And I taught about the tremendous healing properties of onion and garlic. It was a fantastic class. And you'd be surprised all the healing benefits that are in onions. And if you missed the class, I do have the recording. And I'm teaching it for 3 Saturdays in February. The first one, like I said, was last Saturday. Now, next Saturday is comfrey and aloe. And the third Saturday is turmeric and ginger. So again, I'm teaching compresses, poultices, how to, heal swelling or small cuts or bug bites or things like that, colds, flus, all that I'm covering. The healing power of food. One of my favorites is onion. I think I mentioned that. Always start with onion. So we're going to start sauteing onion. I'm not going to bother to move the camera because I can just put everything in the saute pan right here, and then I'll move it to the heat, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so I'm going to start sauteing with some organic olive oil and some organic tamari. I don't use very much. I use a little, and I kind of just go around the pan like that because I just do this all the time. And then people ask me how much is in there. There is probably less than a teaspoon, or yep, less than a teaspoon. I thought I said tablespoon, but teaspoon. So there's not much oil in there at all. You don't need a lot of oil. You just need a little bit to bring out the flavor of the onions. And I'm going to put the onions in there. And then I'm going to put just a dash of tamari. So what is tamari? It is healthy, naturally fermented soy sauce. Soy sauce is an American invention. It's not naturally fermented, and they put MSG in it. So we don't want to use soy sauce. We want to use what's called tamari. And you can get these at tamari at health food stores. And in fact, regular stores like Kroger and stuff are starting to carry organic tamari too. Just turn it around and read the label. It should be organic soybeans, and it should be some type of sea salt. And this one has mirin, which is a brown rice cooking wine in there, and that's just to preserve it. But always read the ingredients, okay? Make sure there's no sugar in there or any type of sweetener in there. We don't want any type of sweetener in our delicious salty tamari. This is a salty condiment. It's going to bring out the sweetness of the onions. You don't need a lot. You just need like a dash. That's it. Whenever you saute vegetables, you either put a pinch of sea salt or a little dash of tamari. That is probably a 1/4 teaspoon at the most. And again, you're not flavoring it so your end product is going to taste salty. That little dash of salt brings out the sweetness of the onion and just makes it so delicious, makes it wonderful. Now, the pan is cold right now. I'm going to put it on a medium heat, and I'm going to slowly bring it up to temperature, and the onions are going to start to sizzle, and I'll show you what it looks like once it starts to sizzle. All right, so welcome, Cheryl. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Sorry for being late.
Well, that's okay. Better late than never. All right, so that is the onions. Now we got 2 other vegetables that are going to go in here. We have some beautiful mushrooms and some beautiful celery. Mushrooms. They're such a unique plant, and they're very high in protein. Most people don't even realize what a great source of protein this is. Also contain zinc. You've got to have your zinc. This is an excellent source of zinc. They are so they contain B vitamins. They contain selenium. Selenium is really good for your heart. Remember, I told you this dish is really good for your heart. Potassium, another thing that's really good for your heart. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is in mushrooms. So we're going to chop the mushroom. Now, in the stuffing, I like the mushroom to be chopped in small pieces. It's just my personal preference. So in your recipe, it says dice small. We're going to want 1 cup of mushroom. I'm using organic white button. You could use baby Bellas. You could use shiitake, maitake, oyster, any kind of mushroom that's your favorite. Go ahead and use. Mushrooms also have the ability to bring things that are dead and decaying back to life. In Oriental medicine, they teach us that whatever a plant does in nature, it does the same thing in our body. And mushrooms grow on dead, decaying wood. So they have the ability to take something that's dead and decaying, like the wood, and bring it back to life. We're going to need to use this 4 mushrooms to create 1 cup. That's it. All right. Everybody like mushrooms? I love mushrooms. They give such a great flavor. We have anybody who doesn't like mushrooms?
I like the,
Good. Awesome. I know some people are not a fan. But they're so good for you. All right, let's go 1 cup of celery. Now, when you get your celery, sometimes you have the beautiful green part. Do you use the green part? You should. It's very flavorful and delicious, and it looks really pretty in soups, or in this particular recipe, in the stuffing part of the stuffed sweet potato. This green leafy part is going to look absolutely beautiful. So I'm just going to cut the green leafy part from the other part and just chop it. And that's going to be part of the 1 cup of celery that we need. And the rest of it, I'm going to cut it lengthwise in pieces so that we can get diced celery. Celery in this dish is going to give you a little bit of texture, because even though we're going to saute the celery and then we're going to bake the sweet potatoes with the stuffing, celery always retains a little bit of its texture and a little bit of its crunch. So that's nice in the recipe to have something like that. I think we're going to need some more celery. Let's see. Celery is another food that's really high, has a high water content. All of your high water content foods, again, fantastic for your heart. Your heart needs good blood flow. And if you want good blood flow, you want to hydrate the body, and you want to hydrate the body with high water content vegetables, such as celery, such as onions. There's some other ones, but those are the ones that are featured in the recipe here today. And also celery is fantastic if you work out and you sweat. Celery will help deplete the fluids, and celery has natural occurring sodium, the good sodium, good plant-based sodium, not the bad sodium that comes from refined salt that we don't want. Good sodium that's fantastic for your body, that will help alkalize your system. And you want your system alkalized because disease lives in an acidic condition. Question about celery. Yes, Cheryl, what's your question about celery?
Well, you answered one of them, because I find it is naturally salty, and I wondered if that's where the celery salt comes from. That's one question. You know, you can buy celery salt. Is it made from celery itself?
I don't use celery salt on a regular basis. But I would, for the best of my knowledge, celery salt, and maybe someone could look it up, is probably a type of salt with ground up celery in it.
Oh, okay.
It's called celery salt, but don't quote me on that. I don't use that ingredient. That's why I don't have a frame of reference for that.
That's okay. Well, the other question, the actual question that I had was, do you know, I mean, the difference in taste between organic and regular celery is night and day. I cannot eat regular. It almost tastes like there's a toxin on it or in it. I just wonder if anybody else has noticed there's a huge taste difference. I only buy organic celery because the regular, I just think it tastes awful.
Yeah,
And I'm
good
not
for-
sure. Okay.
No, that's good for you. Fantastic that you taste that difference.
Yeah. Thanks.
I
ahead.
highly recommend organic everything. I don't
Yeah.
put it in the recipe because it would be redundant if I said organic, 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 organic. But there is a huge difference. You are tasting the chemicals, and chemicals have a bitter flavor to them. We don't like that bitter flavor, not at all. And so celery and other things that have a high water content would be some of the things that are more important to get organic. If it has a high water content, it's going to absorb more of those chemicals. So celery probably has more of that bitter taste that you're talking about.
Yeah, bitter and almost in an odd way numbs out my mouth after a while. I just can't eat it. So I'm just curious if that's the pesticides.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I wish every human on the planet could taste that like you do, and then they would stop buying it, and then the people would stop manufacturing it, right? Okay, so
Yes.
that was the 20-minute mark for the celery, or the celery. We were talking about celery for the millet. All right, so let's check the millet and see if it's done. How do you check the millet? Take the lid off and very gently with a spatula, just check to make sure all the water has been absorbed. You see there's no water left? That means that the millet is done. But the pan is still hot, and I like to turn the heat off and then let my whole grain sit for about 5 minutes before I do anything with it. Because it's going to continue to kind of cook for like 5 more minutes before I do anything. Now over here with the onions, these onions are beautiful. They're nice and translucent, and they're soft, and they're actually starting to brown also. Hope you can see that. So get yourself a mixing bowl that we're going to put everything in, and get the onions. We'll put that in the bowl. Now we're going to use this same pan and continue to saute the other vegetables for our stuffing.
Yes. Okay, all done.
All right, so here we go with some mushrooms, or 1 cup of mushrooms. Mushrooms don't take very long to saute. Just a couple minutes, they're going to be done. Give a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of tamari, just to flavor it a little bit. And we saute the mushroom.
Take it. Good boy. Let's go. Good boy. Yeah. Up. Good.
Is that Cheryl? Are you talking to your dog?
Oh my God, I forgot to mute. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oops, sorry. Yes, I was.
That's funny. All right, look at that. The mushrooms are done. Would that take like a minute or something? Like I said, mushrooms don't take long. And then I still have a little bit of seasoning in the pan. I don't need to add any more olive oil, but I am going to add just a dash of tamari to season it. So every time that you saute a vegetable, you always want to season it with either a pinch of sea salt or a dash of tamari. Brings out the flavor, makes it more flavorful. But I'm using such a small amount. It's like a pinch or a dash. This is called layering the flavor. Okay, so every time you saute, you're seasoning that vegetable and you're making it really flavorful. So your end product is just more flavorful and more delicious. So people usually say, like when they taste my food, wow, oh my God, that's so delicious, because I'm layering the flavor. I'm not adding like a half a teaspoon of salt here, and that would be too much. And then your end product would taste salty. You want your end product to be able to taste the sweet onions and to taste the the sweet millet. You want to taste all those flavors and have the tamari or the sea salt be the enhancement that brings out the flavor. That's how you properly season things and properly cook things. Just going to take a few minutes here. All right, so I was going to say, you know, if you guys come up with anything that is of interest to you that you want to learn in a future cooking class, you can let us know. On March 27th, which is a Monday, I will be back through the Royal Oak Library teaching how to make a stuffed portobello mushroom featuring the whole grain quinoa, because March is heading into springtime, right? Which is right around the corner. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, so that's the next time I'm going to be with the Royal Oak Library. But if you have any more suggestions of things you want to learn, because somebody said they wanted to learn about millet last time I taught through the library, which is why I decided to do this recipe. So the celery's done. I said it doesn't take that long, really. So in our bowl so far, we have onions, mushroom, and celery. That's it. All right, now we can work on the sweet potatoes. Start doing some more stuff for the filling. We're gonna let that millet just hang out there. So at 5:30, yes, the next class, 5:30 to 6:30. Yep. You can write that down on your calendar. So to make the stuffed sweet potatoes, you have to bake the sweet potatoes. I did that before class. When you go to the store, try and find relatively smaller sweet potatoes to make your stuffed sweet potato. You know, sometimes you get sweet potatoes that are like huge. The big sweet potatoes are going to take forever to bake in the oven. And then when you go to serve it, it's just way too big. So try and find 3 relatively smaller ones. All you have to do is just wash the sweet potato, take a fork and just stick a fork in there a couple times, and then put it in the oven at 350 degrees for 1 hour. I like doing it on parchment paper because the sweet potato is so sticky and sweet. Sometimes it gets like brown or something. So the parchment paper just makes it easy to clean up. So after an hour, take a fork and put it into the sweet potato to see if it's soft. It may not be soft. You may have to bake these for like an hour and 15 or 20 minutes. But as soon as the sweet potato is soft enough where you can put a fork in it, they're done. Okay. Sometimes it takes a little longer than an hour, but on average, an hour. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut the sweet potatoes in half lengthwise so that we can stuff them. Like so. Beautiful orange color. All right, there's our beautiful sweet potatoes. It starts with 3 small ones. So then once we cut them open, we have 6. So we're going to make 6 stuffed sweet potatoes. And if you're not going to eat these, or if you're not serving 6 people, guess what? You just make these and then you wrap them and you put them in the freezer. And you have stuffed sweet potato all ready to go. You have your meal in the freezer ready to go. You don't have to worry about, you know, if you're hungry and you don't have anything in your house. If you always have good homemade food that you made yourself, that you wrap up and freeze, then you're not going to eat bad food that's bad for you. You're always going to turn to good, healthy food, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to take some of the flesh out of the middle. And I do that by just taking my spoon and kind of working it back and forth like this and take some out. Don't take all of the flesh because you need some of the flesh in there to hold the sides up so it doesn't collapse. So you're just going to take some of the flesh out, and we're going to use this sweet potato flesh as part of the filling. So you're just saving some of it like so. Sweet potato, this is your vitamin C. Excellent, excellent source of vitamin C. And that vitamin C helps to boost your immune system to keep you healthy and strong. Sweet potatoes are an excellent source of fiber. High fiber foods for your heart. They're an excellent source of potassium. Potassium is essential for your heart to maintain a healthy blood pressure. You've got to have a good source of potassium going on, and sweet potatoes are great for that. I'm scooping out some of the flesh. Let's see, what else can I tell you about sweet potatoes? Vitamin A. Vitamin A is fantastic for your eyes. And calcium. We've got calcium in the sweet potato. We have phosphorus in the sweet potato. All those things in there for you. Good for your heart. Heart healthy food. So I'm just scooping out the flesh like so. All right, so we save all that. Now we're gonna need to use a food processor to make the stuffing. I'm going to put into the food processor what we just scooped out from the sweet potato. Put in there like so. Let's see what else we got. We have 2 tablespoons of that naturally fermented, good for us, salty condiment tamari. I have a 1/4 cup of tahini. Tahini is made from ground up sesame seeds. Ground up sesame seeds is high in calcium and iron. This is a vegetable source of fat, which imparts tremendous flavor into the dish. Okay. I'm going to just give that a little puree before I add the millet to chop up that sweet potato. The sweet potato is very soft, so I was just giving it a little extra pulse. I don't think that's written in your recipe to do the sweet potato first. I just did that to help it out. Now, we're also going to put the millet into the food processor. That is going to accomplish making it even more creamy. But this is what it looks like before it goes into the food processor. It already has a nice creaminess. And do you see how it's holding together? Like I said at the class, like quinoa falls apart. Millet is more creamy and it holds together. This is what the millet looks like. So we are going to put that into the food processor also. And let's puree it. I'm going to scrape down the sides, make sure we got everything in there. I don't want to over process it, so I'm just making sure that everything is well combined, and it's creating this delicious creamy texture, excuse me. Oh, that is delicious. Oh, that's so good. Oh, I'm gonna add a half a teaspoon of sea salt also in addition. Just puree that up one more time. And that's it. Now you're gonna add the delicious pureed sweet potato to the sauteed vegetables. So. This right here, this pureed sweet potato and sauteed vegetables is so delicious. And it's going to be even more delicious. You're going to stuff the sweet potato. You're going to put it back in the oven for 20 more minutes. We're not going to have time for the 20 minutes in the class, but you'll get the general idea. When you put it in the oven for 20 more minutes, the top of it like starts to brown and it's beautiful. All right, any questions?
I have a suggestion about the sweet potatoes cooking.
Uh-huh.
I have a air fryer. It's just basically, you know, a mini convection oven. And I can cook sweet potatoes in about half the time than in my regular oven. So just if anybody's curious about it, that those air fryers work well for a lot more than quote unquote frying.
Okay, great to know. I have an air fryer too. I don't use it to like bake things like I would bake a sweet potato. I use the air fryer for, I've created other recipes in it, but no, that's good to know. So about a half hour, the sweet
Yeah.
potato is done.
Yeah, you just have to set the oven a little lower than like your conventional because you don't want it to burn, but drop the temperature maybe 10 degrees for about half hour, check it. But that's usually a small sweet potato will be really soft. And then you get that wonderful crisp exterior on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good to know.
Yeah.
I usually bake like batches of stuff. So when I bake these 3 sweet potatoes, I had 4 other sweet potatoes in my oven. So
Mm.
yeah, but if you only want to do like 1 or 2 sweet potatoes and you have an air fryer, that is definitely good to know.
Yeah, it's also a savings on energy
Yeah.
because you're heating up such a much smaller space than the full oven if you know if you're not cooking other things in the oven at the same time.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks
Yeah.
for sharing.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
I was wishing you could just send me some because I'm getting very hungry.
Yeah,
Beam it over, Scotty.
right. All right. Well, I just keep talking if there's no more questions. I will be back through the Royal Oak Library in March teaching stuffed portobellos featuring the whole grain quinoa. And if you have any other suggestions of stuff you want to learn, let us know, either me or Susan at the library. My regular cooking classes, because I teach classes besides, you know, for the library not tomorrow, 2 days from now, Wednesday. It is a stew with millet and green lentils featuring black garlic and fresh turmeric. That's coming up this Wednesday. And the following Wednesday is a kasha pasta casserole, the whole grain kasha. That's the following Wednesday. So I always have classes going on every month. And I also have the Saturday class, which is healing with foods, poultices, compresses, teas, and more. I'm telling you the information, the onions and garlic one I just did, there was 6 pages of information about the healing benefits. And this coming Saturday is aloe and comfrey. and comfrey is always my go-to to heal things. So I'm sharing my knowledge about how I use these plants and foods in medicinal ways to treat swelling or inflammation or things like that. All right, so like I said, we're going to pretend that these were in the oven for 20 more minutes. And now they came out of the oven. And this is what they look like. Now, I do have a little bit of stuffing left over, and that's okay. You can go ahead and eat it. Or you can bake it in the oven so it has like a crisp top. And then you have just like a little side dish of stuffing. Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl says it looks wonderful and it tastes delicious. So you've got, obviously the overall flavor is sweet because they're sweet potatoes. But like I said, the celery gives you a little bit of crunch, and the mushrooms impart this tremendous flavor too. And don't forget like the creamy millet and tahini in there. It's got this overall like creamy texture, which just is really satisfying. Comfort food is creamy. So for Valentine's Day, comfort creamy food that's good for your heart and also is beautiful. So we want beautiful, fancy foods for Valentine's Day.
Looks wonderful. Thank you so much, Chef Val.
Yeah.
And Mary and Cheryl for joining this wonderful class. I can't wait to make the recipe again, after seeing you make it.
Just really
Val.
wish I could get some right now.
Okay, well, I did email you, Mary. I emailed you the recipe.
Okay,
and
thank you
Cheryl,
very much. 'cause
Cheryl,
that
I
stopped me
don't
from
know.
writing.
Oh, you're welcome. And Cheryl, I don't see that you signed up for the class. I didn't see your email in there.
I thought I did, and I go through all the different libraries to see the programs, and I put today, but I put 6:30, and I thought I registered, but can you still send me the?
Why don't you type your email in
Okay.
the chat, and then I can do that.
Okay, and I have a question for Val.
Yeah.
All right, so with my sesame allergy, which is an absolute nightmare because everything delicious on earth seems to have tahini in it. What about like a real toasty peanut butter?
Oh yeah, I love peanut butter. Absolutely love peanut butter. You could
Yes.
substitute peanut butter in any recipe for tahini. You could substitute a cashew butter, an almond butter. You could even, if you wanted to cut back on the fat, instead of using the tahini, you could just use water or something to make it so it's not so stiff and hard.
Yeah,
But the nut butter, whatever you choose, really adds a lot of flavor to it.
I know nothing is the same as sesame, but it just hit me, all these recipes. Why don't I just use, a real toasty peanut butter or something like that? But I have almond butter also. What about cashew butter? Which
Yeah, I think if I didn't, sorry, but yeah, cashew butter also. Yes.
probably did. Many years ago, when In Season was still alive and kicking, that was a hard loss. They had a special one time, and it was like the best thing I ever tasted there. And it was like a tart made with cashew and broccoli and pastry. And that's like the one thing I wish I knew how to make that. And do they use cashew cream or cashew butter as a filling, like a?
Well, I never had that you're talking about, but I imagine if that was the name of it, it was probably like a cream of broccoli sauce, and they were using the cashew butter for the creaminess. Would be, if I was going to try and create something like that and someone gave me that name, that's what I would do. So probably for sure they were using the cashew butter as the creaminess in there.
It was so good. And every time I went back, I'd ask for it, and they never had it again. And I get the chef that had made it left. So he went somewhere else, or she, but I could that be one? Like, I was the one that suggested the millet, and thank goodness it's recorded so I can go watch the beginning. Sorry. But, you know, something like that, like, I guess you would call it a tart or I'm not sure. It was a savory tart.
Yeah, I can do a tart. So was it like in a pie shape and it was served like a piece of pie?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was broccoli, cream cashew broccoli, something like that.
Yeah. I remember it had, I believe it had it was like the cashew cream. I remember it had broccoli and I think it had pieces of sweet potato too.
Oh, yum. I was wondering, in my head, I'm thinking I probably want to put like some sauteed tempeh in it too, would be really good.
Yeah. So I would love that if you know, as a future, it's just an option. It was such a wonderful, and it came with, for lack of a better term, a gravy on it, on the side and a little, and I wonder if that was like more of that cashew cream type. Anyway, it was so good.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was my favorite vegan dish I've ever had.
Oh, wow. That really says something if it was your favorite dish you've ever had.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think I've been chasing the dream, you know, without a clue how to make it. So just an idea. You know, Susan's like, it's time to go. Earl, shut up.
Do you
Well, thank,
do you remember if it was all vegetables or if it had something like tempeh in it?
It didn't. I remember
Okay.
that. But I wouldn't be adverse to that at all. And I also want to apologize, Val. I realized as I went back through email that you had replied to me when you had asked me if I made the sandwich spread. I have had the most busy year. Susan, I don't know if you see me, but this is what we accomplished. Houston and I got certified. He's my service dog, and that's who I was talking to. So when I was saying up, he helps me get up out of chairs and balances me. So I'm gonna have a little more time now to try some recipes. So it was a 7-month process, busy, but we did it. So yay. I know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I
that's
wanted to
great.
mention,
Thank you.
one more thing. If you haven't already, please sign up for my newsletter on macroval.com so it keeps you posted about all the classes that I'm teaching.
Yeah.
It just says sign up for Val's newsletter on my website.
Okay. I have like breathing space now. I can't, it was quite the ordeal and it was worth it, but I haven't been doing too much cooking. So you're holding up something, Chef Bell stuffed portobellos.
Yeah, I'm going to show everybody this. We're going to have Chef Val back next month, and she's going to do a wonderful presentation that will rival today's.
Okay.
Chef Val's stuffed portobello mushrooms, and learn how to make this colorful, flavorful dish featuring the whole grain quinoa. It's perfect to serve for your spring holiday dinner. So spring is near, and Chef Val is returning next month.
Good.
I'm going to stop the recording now, and thank you all for coming.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Val. I'll watch the beginning. When do you post?